Let's do
Kyle
it.
Newman, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Will. Thank you for having me on today. I've been looking forward to talking to you. Um, Love your stuff, man. You always just stood out to me as someone who makes great connections, and I just wanted to be a part of it, just a little
Dude,
bit,
man, well,
little
I'm
bit.
super honored that you're on here on the WillPower podcast, and I'm excited to kind of get into your story a little bit. And it's funny, most of the time when
Sure.
people come into the studio, they're like very like impressed with what we have going on here, but I'm really impressed with your setup. If people are actually watching and not just listening,
Thank you.
your setup is dope, man.
Yeah, I mean, here you could check out a little bit. I was working on it last night. But I built out this entire studio in my office. This is part of my office. So, just a little background. I am a personal injury and medical malpractice attorney and a trial lawyer. And I went out on my own last year, opened a practice, and all my staff is virtual. So, this is like my fun house. This was like my dream. So, I was going for like the Joe
Dude, I
Rogan
think you
kind
might
of
be
man
passing him. You
cave
just need
look
the
back here.
sign. I love his sign that says the Joe Rogan Experience on the back. I love it.
Oh, I love it. So this wall, it was all blank wood slats. And when I first moved in here, this was it was a jewelry store. Okay, so they had these old like yeshiva, guys cleaning diamonds back in this part. And then in the main part of the office was like their like sales area. Okay, so when we first moved in, me and my son Rafe, we splatter painted this. They're all like wood slats, and we put them up, nailed them up. It was like the best activity ever. Got like covered in
Dude,
paint. It was so fun.
I'm
So
even
fun.
more impressed that you did that yourself because I've had to have a lot of help over here. And but dude, I'm excited to have you on. You kind of shared a little bit about yourself, and for people that are listening, you've been an attorney for 15 plus years. But you mentioned that you just went out on your own last year, and but what you didn't mention is that you were actually working with family. Your dad and your
Yes,
brothers so the whole family
yes,
is
both my
attorney.
brothers.
They're lawyered up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm a third generation plaintiff's personal injury attorney. My grandfather, Harold Gordon, he was like one of the OGs of downtown New York City personal injury attorneys. His practice is still around. My grandfather's still alive. He's in his 90s. But when I first started out, I was very lucky. My dad hired me. I could have gone and worked at a district attorney's office. I always knew I wanted to be in court. I've always been a people person. People and interacting and being able to make a connection on a very human level has always been my thing. Okay. So I started working with my dad. Day one, he's like, Kyle, you're trying every single case in this office because my dad was a solo guy. He didn't try his own cases, but was and still is a very successful, the best personal injury attorney I know. The business that he runs is unbelievable. And I worked there for 15 years, and we had some unbelievable battles, victories. A family practice in like a suburban area of the Bronx, taking down the biggest defense firms in all of New York City. There is no better feeling in
Love
the
it.
fucking world. I'll tell you that right now. Okay. So fast forward. COVID happens. Before that, I would be in court literally every single day. I'd take the subway from my apartment. My wife and I, when we first started dating, lived downtown. And then the progression is once you have kids, you kind of slowly move uptown in Manhattan. So I was at court every single day of my life. Lived in court. Would hang out in the courthouse just to see other older attorneys. I'm a big geek with that. I love learning and watching from other attorneys and this unbelievable
So you
attorneys
would just go
here
in
in
and
New
sit
York.
down on other people's court cases just to watch the other
Oh,
attorneys
yeah.
in action.
At, at one point, I had like it was basically a listserv that I forced like certain like judges clerks. I'm like, go on, just send me updates on any big trials that are coming up, and you would hear about them in the courthouse. But I was very fortunate and I picked up some of the most amazing things, some things that I still use today
And any
in court.
trials or just
Um,
basically trials
so
that are specific to your
no.
type of law?
So my type of law is dealing with any type of serious accident. So it can be a car accident case, trucking accident case, anything on the road, motorcycle. I've done all anything with two wheels or multiple wheels. Then it could be premises cases where someone trips and falls over some type of defect, like uneven sidewalk, a broken area of outside a house. And the good thing about personal injury is that it's always going to be something different. We worked on construction cases, some product liability cases, and ultimately, I don't know how this happened, but I found my real true calling in all of law, and that is in medicine. And number one, above and beyond, I am a medical malpractice attorney. I sued doctors and hospitals for horrific injuries that happened here in New York. And those are really the only cases that I litigate now, that I actually, I also have a handful of more higher exposure type of car accident cases that I litigate. But one of the reasons I went out on my own was, I'm very tech forward. I have a vision kind of for the next phase of my life after working like insane madman, which I still do. Anyway, I love working, but I kind of at this stage of my professional life, could try slightly fewer trials and work on the business and growing a big practice. So that's what I'm trying to do now. Try to play catch up after 15 years.
So did a big part of the reason of you going into that type of practice, was it, you mentioned that one of your mentors was actually a doctor, is that correct? And he taught you a lot about medicine, which at first, without really knowing, because, I know you, as far as like you're an attorney and, the type of content that you're putting on social media, but a lot of the times people that don't have anything to do with court, they just kind of assume like, oh, you kind of, it's like how we see attorneys like on TV or whatever, right? But then, so whenever you told me that you're one of your mentors, besides your dad, of course, being this doctor, and that you learn all these things about medicine, I was like a little like confused. And then it's like, oh, it's because you do that. So is that kind of, was it that guy that really drove you to just focus on that type of law?
No question. So this was Afternoons with Ron, I used to call it. It was basically, it seemed like it might not have been every single day, but essentially every day after court, I would go to crazy Dr. Ron's apartment, wherever he was, and we would work on cases. And he trained me. I was in Dr. Ron's School of Medicine for 10 years straight. Okay. I used to say, oh, I'm graduating this, I'm going for my boards. We used to joke. But so Dr. Ron was a very eccentric, but the most brilliant medical mind that I've ever encountered. And all I do is talk to and work with doctors and very, serious, backgrounds and, whatever. But he was able to. Are you guys getting a little kickback from the...
it's the air. We're going to turn it down here. We're going to turn it off here a little bit, so.
Okay. So I was very fortunate where crazy Dr. Ron was no longer practicing. And when I met him, he was in his late 60s, maybe 70s. But he was a wild man, okay? He had like 5 different ex-wives. He would take out like these girls. I would come to meet him to drop off medical records. And he'd, oh, Kyle, come upstairs. That's how he talked. He was crazy. Smoked cigarettes. And he would be up with 2 girls in his bed that were naked. Okay,
wait, what?
Okay, with the medical records that he was reviewing.
What in the world?
The guy lived for medicine. Okay, and why Dr. Ron was so amazing is because right after he lost his license. Okay, he was at one point he developed a big drug addiction, this guy, okay? And I think he fell off like a Carnival cruise ship and got broke his back. Like he had different lives, this guy, but
what a mentor.
When he lost his license, he did, when I say the most disgusting human being would like eat and there'd be crap all over. I wish I had a picture. I wouldn't even keep a picture. He was so gross.
This is so hilarious.
He
This
was
is
a
not what I
fucking
pictured
lunatic.
when you wrote.
But
Did you wrote? Because you said
no.
my father James, period, and then you go and the doctor, and then boom. I was expecting this is crazy.
No. You're expecting a brilliant, esteemed, but this guy, he was. So Ron was he was a child prodigy. He's one of these guys that went to Harvard and graduated at like 17, and born and raised in Queens, and went through the whole medical system. Was really a medical prodigy for a while. Built up a big practice, and his love of medicine. Okay, that old school doctor mentality of really listening to a patient's history, their complaints, really thinking about what's going on without needing a CT scan, an MRI, and anything else. He was able to diagnose people and figure out these cases in a way that really opened up my mind and allowed me, the chance to learn medicine in a very special way, a very intimate way that allows me to go into court at a relatively young age for this practice, and be able to battle a specialist in, my last case was one of the biggest vascular surgeons in the country.
So I wanted to ask you about that because you got in your first year going out on your own, you won a lawsuit that was over $20 million. So
this passed right before Thanksgiving.
I remember
it was unbelievable.
Messaging you about that. That was amazing. So walk me through that. Like for somebody that doesn't know anything about law, like how did this case develop, and then what exactly happened, and then how did you come out on the winning side?
So a $20 million verdict. I'm sure people see big verdicts all over the place, and there are unbelievable attorneys that get them. But a $20 million verdict is, generally going to be a horrific case where someone is permanently, catastrophically, life is essentially ruined. Okay. And in this case, my client, her name was Lisa Darko. She was I think she was 51 at the time. She went to a neighborhood a hospital, St. Barnabas Hospital, that's been around forever in the Bronx, about at this point 6 years ago. And she had something called a hypertensive emergency, where they couldn't get her blood pressure down to an acceptable level. Okay, she was a diabetic. She had high cholesterol, which people in their 50s have. But essentially, once she was in the hospital, a hypertensive emergency, what she had going on, because she also had evidence that her kidneys were starting to fail. So there's end organ damage going on. Okay, end organ damage when you have when your blood pressure is out of control. Could be something to your kidneys. It could be something to your heart, or it could be something to your brain, where someone might start acting strange. They call it altered mental status. Okay, and it's one of the signs that you're having a stroke. Okay, it's one of the telltale clinical signs. So anyway, instead of admitting her to this hospital where she needed to be monitored, when someone's blood pressure is like this, you could imagine. You could have blood clots, you could have a stroke, you could have a heart attack. It has to be, maintained in a certain way. And instead of putting her in what she needed was an ICU for at least a period of time, they stuck her on the general medical floor, which, when I say was a complete nightmare at this hospital at that particular time, with, unfortunately, very young, very inexperienced doctors who had no idea what they were even doing when they wrote blatantly in the chart that she was having a stroke, and she was literally, multiple different nurses in the medical chart wrote, patient is yelling, I think I'm having a stroke. I'm going into stroke at multiple different times of the night, and there's no stroke code. They don't do anything. Okay. And basically they propped her up in her hospital chair. She's stroked out on one side of her body, and her kids come in the morning about 9 o'clock, and they take off the blanket, and they're like, what is happening? Mom is clearly stroked out. Okay. And from that point on at the hospital, no one She was admitted to this hospital for another five days. Not one person ever discussed with her family, that she had a stroke, the nature of the stroke, what happened. Okay, they totally blew them off to the point that the kids, they had three. She had three kids at the time, all in their 20s. Very good looking, very respectable, very intelligent Ghanaian family. And they took her out of the hospital, paralyzed, rolled her out, and took her to a big hospital center at Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx, where immediately they diagnosed her with a stroke. They worked her up properly. But at that point, when you have in her case, it was a ischemic stroke, where blood flow is cut off to a portion of the brain, you only have so much time to restore the blood flow before that part of the brain is dead forever. Okay, there's a saying in medicine: time is brain. The more time you waste, the more dead brain cells you're gonna get. So she was paralyzed on one side of her body. This was a woman who worked her ass off her whole life. Four amazing kids. Her husband left her, had another family in Ghana. Who actually, okay, at the end of the trial, listen to this, the estranged husband calls her from Ghana and says, "I'm going to come for the closing argument." Okay, he hasn't seen the kids, the wife, for 15 years. I got on the phone and I was like, "If you because I'm gearing up for my big summation to this is at the end of a month-long trial. I'm like, if you fucking show up, they're gonna have to carry me and you out of this courthouse, because I'm not letting you into the courtroom."
That's crazy. So when did this happen?
It was scary.
Like, what year was this? Whenever she went into that first hospital?
So it was in September, I believe, of 2017.
Okay, so it's been a little bit.
2017 or 8, I should know.
I can't believe 2017 has been 7 years ago.
Yeah, well, you got to consider, in New York, courts and cases in general were basically frozen in time for 2 years. Yeah, COVID time, court was stopped for a year, and then it was just delayed, for another year, while all these, New York didn't get its shit together, the court system, for a very long time. Didn't have
How much
virtual
did
stuff.
you guys originally sue the hospital for?
So in New York, you don't really put I think initially it was $10 million, but you just need to assert an amount greater than the threshold to get into the Supreme Court here. But our demand was I think it was $22 million by the time we got to the trial. In these cases also, Will, you don't know in the beginning when someone has some horrific accident. You don't know what their needs are going to be, 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line, whether they're going to be permanently disabled. Some people recover from stroke somewhat. So by that time, it was, to be able to paint this picture of a relatively healthy, vibrant, hardworking woman in the Bronx. And so Bronx County, I am a Bronx attorney. That's where, 9 days out of 10 I am. That's like my home base. And it's a great place to try cases. You get great jurors who are really engaged and into the case.
So how is this lady doing now?
So it's the same. Her kids, the really sad part about this particular case was that her kids basically had to put their lives on hold. And that was a big part of what the jurors told us afterwards, is that they kind of wanted to set them free of this huge burden of, now you go from a college kid to now your disabled mother's, 24/7 home health aide, changing her, bathing her, she can't do anything on her own. So you can't really live, go out. It's amazing what they did do, this family. They all went to college and graduated. One of them, Marvin, the youngest, is like one of the most amazing people ever. I think after this experience, he's going to go to law school, because they were there every day with me in court. And that helped a lot too. When you have a client who's really into it, who's intelligent, and you can work with, that helps.
That's awesome, man. And how much?
Yeah.
No, you're
I know
good.
I'm throwing
I'm
a lot
assuming it at all.
of stuff out there.
So my question is, out of that $20+ million settlement that they got, how are they how much of it are they seeing?
Okay, so that's where this case got very interesting. So they did not collect the full 20 million. At the end of the day, it was under 10 million. Okay, but the problem in the case was that the hospital itself was uninsured. Okay, has no
Or like
insurance.
things like this, whenever like somebody
Okay.
sues
So,
you, then you have insurance that's going to pay.
which at least, yes. Well, at least in New York, I know in states like Florida, other states, they don't require doctors in certain medical facilities to carry independent insurance. So this particular hospital is a neighborhood hospital that, since I've started practicing, has always been threatening to, go out, bankrupt, which would be the worst thing possible. Because then it would just be stuck in, kind of purgatory until the bankruptcy. I've had that happen with a hospital in the past, another terrible case. So ultimately, the family was smart. We really discussed all of our options, and we basically structured the settlement in payments, which at the end of the day, I think was the best thing to do, and a way that they are going to maximize the amount
That's
of
awesome,
money
man.
that they get. And at the end of the day, she will be covered for.
That's awesome.
For life.
So I know New York is a pretty big place, and but I'm curious because a couple of things that come up to mind are, so you grew up in Long Island, is that correct? So
Yes.
I'm like big into like documentaries, like murder documentaries, and dude. Dude,
Gilgo Beach, man.
I don't.
Oh,
deep into
dude.
that. I know that's not your like.
I was
your the law you practice or whatever. But tell me. Yeah, tell
I
me.
love
Like,
that stuff.
so I think of that, and I think of like El Chapo being up there for a little bit. Like dude.
I got great stories on both.
Give me
of
something.
So,
give me something.
I mean, okay, so. First on the Gilgo Beach. So I'm not a criminal attorney. I like crime stuff like anyone else. But I grew up on the South Shore of Long Island, not far from Gilgo Beach. Okay, we grew up going to Jones Beach, which was the big public beaches out there. I grew up in the house that my grandfather owned and raised my dad in. So we were like our whole like fixtures in the I grew up in Merrick. And in a place that was, our house was on a canal. So in the backyard, we would have our, a boat and like a dinghy we'd have docks, we used to ice skate on on the canal, but very close to Gilgo Beach. And when all that was happening, that was like my dad went to CW Post, so did my mom, for undergrad. So they were here for that whole thing. And yeah, crazy.
So how long do you think
Totally
that will
crazy.
go on until this guy gets convicted and everything?
See, that's the thing with criminal cases, like civil cases. I mean, this case I was just on, 6 years. They could take a long time. You got to. I mean, this. It seems pretty clear. I was hung up on
And for
sheriff.
people that have never heard the case, can you sum it up to me in like a couple minutes? Just so like I would assume you probably know it better than I do, but I just listened to so many podcasts, watched so many documentaries on it. I heard that the wife sold the rights to the story to Peacock for like $2 million or something like that. So I'm sure there's more stuff coming.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, smart move. I actually like Peacock a lot. Good show I'm into now, Bupkis.
Really, I haven't
Pete
pulled the
Davidson.
trigger on
It's
it.
good.
I almost did whenever they were playing I don't know if you're a big football guy, but Miami Dolphins and Kansas.
Huge, yeah.
Kansas
Jets, unfortunately.
Really?
That's how we.
I was like, man, I was like, I should just get it, but I was like, no. I was like, why do they do this? This is a playoff game.
You know what though? I watched Oppenheimer for the second time. The first time I saw Oppenheimer, I wasn't into it. The second time was, I guess, better. This show Bupkis, they got a lot of good stuff on Peacock.
So yeah, somebody that hasn't heard that, give us like a 2-minute summary on the whole thing.
Yeah, so the Gilgo Beach is a very like affluent little like haven beach town on the South Shore of Long Island, where at some point, I think it started in the late 70s, 80s, right? Maybe later, women started disappearing and murders started happening in this very small private community that had a private police force where the sheriff in the case and other people, politicians, there were multiple different cover-ups, which I think was just, at the end of the day, after watching it, I think it was just a coincidence that they had a psychopathic, like Nazi, he was deranged, that guy, the sheriff. I always thought it was him, but apparently they caught this guy, and from what I see, what I've read and seen, the description of the car, the guy is a monster, and he had like a dungeon he built in his.
And this guy's like he worked in Manhattan. He was an architect, I believe. So he's like a middle class normal dude. And they caught him and collected
just
what?
Chop up and collected. I guess it's terrible. I mean, just like he was a complete psych. Like a lot of these serial killers are.
What? Yeah.
So
Chapo.
So one of my favorite clients ever, I don't know, Dennis, okay? Dennis is a Dominican guy from the Bronx and a corrections officer that worked for the federal, I believe it's Park Row, okay? And he worked with all the he went there when Epstein was there, okay? He was there for Chapo, like directly with Chapo, like, moving him from, God knows where. And he would give us like updates. He this guy, big guy, ride his Harley, the big Dominican guy, tatted up. He's the best. Come in, give me a hug. Best client
So what
ever.
was he again?
Love
what
this
was
guy.
he?
And
Gotcha.
he was a corrections officer because at some point when Chapo, he was brought to Manhattan for trial at some point, and any of these huge like international drug dealer, evil villains, they get put in this federal detention center downtown. It's called Park Row. I believe. I think
I'm
that's
pretty
where
sure
that's the name.
Did you ever hear of the Col Nixium? It was a program that it was called Nixium, and the guy that was head of it all, he got charged, and I believe he was there as well too. I'm trying to think of his name. Keith Raniere.
Yeah.
I'm actually having one of the girls that was on there that was on a documentary. She's coming on as well too, so I'm excited to kind of pick her brain on it. I love that kind of stuff, dude.
Oh, that's cool. He wasn't. He was in the building. He always knew when these high profile people were. Like, I think Martha Stewart was there at some point. Like, always knew when they were there. But he worked there for like 25 years. He had a motorcycle accident.
So a lot of the times I have people on the podcast that are leaving, let's say, a salaried W-2 job, and they're finally like pulling the trigger and saying like, this is something I've been wanting to do my whole life. I'm going to pull the trigger, high risk, high reward. I'm going to go and be self-employed. In your case, it was a little same but different because you were an attorney, but you were working for your family, your dad, your brothers. We talked about that. How hard was that, like leaving that, and how is that relationship now?
It's a great question. It was the hardest thing ever. One of the craziest, most emotional things ever. And the reasons I was doing it was to save our relationship as a family and to keep the family intact, because we're such a close family. Love my brothers, love my dad. They are the best. But in my professional life, it got to a point where I wanted to be an entrepreneur and I wanted to run my own business, and I was already doing that to more than a certain extent. I basically was running in my own practice within the practice. And to be honest, I thought that my family would have seen the writing on the wall more. I'm the type of person that if I know something is wrong, I'm going to talk to you about it and be upfront. And sometimes, things like this could if it's not working or it's, or if there's issues, you deal with it because you're a family and you love each other. But it got to the point where it was either then or never, for me. I just turned 40. So at that stage, I made the really hard decision to
And how is that
pick up and
relationship
leave.
now?
So after about 6 months, a very intense, very, very tough. We're pretty much back to normal. I just was up at, we have a house in Vermont that was there with the family. I have a 7-year-old. My brother Devin has a 2-year-old daughter who is the best. And having them like your cousins, like it is the best thing ever. So we'll get
That's
over
awesome.
it. We'll get over it. But we're good. It took some time. We love hard, us Newmans.
Well, I'm not a Newman, but I do agree that doing hard things makes you better. So I'm 100%.
Absolutely. That's how you learn.
So,
right? And grow.
But which, by the way, I love Vermont. I flew to Boston a few years back and then drove all around New England, and it's beautiful, dude.
Oh, it's the best.
And I wasn't used to like driving like 30
Best.
minutes or an hour and then being in a completely different state. The states are tiny.
Yeah. And those all those like little ski areas and like they're amazing during the summer.
I went
it's all,
during
like,
November, which was
lakes
like the
and
foliage
hikes and,
season, so it was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing, and the weather is just crisp,
Yes.
beautiful.
So one question I have for you that
yeah.
I get asked all the time, it's funny in my business, and I don't really know how it's in your business, but people always want to be more active on social media, right? They look up what I'm doing and they're like, man, like you got to figure it out. Like that's what I'm going to do, but I just don't even know where to start. And then people that are like, see what I'm doing, they're like, well, hey, is that actually working for your business? Like, how's that helping you? So I'm asking you the same question. Like, are you pretty much one of the only, or maybe the only agent or lawyer, attorney in your area? I would say New York, but there's so many smaller states around that maybe you don't know anybody else. A mutual friend that we know is Colton Richardson, who's an attorney here. There's nobody in Oklahoma that's doing like what he's doing. So I'm asking you, like, are you the only one? And then what has it done for your business, and how long have you been doing it? Like, share a little bit of that with me.
Sure. So this was another reason why I kind of wanted to go out on my own. Where I was before was very, kind of closed off. We didn't need to network and, go out, meet attorneys. We just were happy to spend time with the family. But I love doing that. We've talked about this. I love people, meeting people, and especially through this, whatever preconceived notion that you have of social media, until you really do it and really put your heart and soul into it and really work at it, because we talked about it. This is fucking work. You have to put in work and be dedicated. Learn. You're gonna suck. Half of my stuff still sucks. But you learn. You're committed to it, and the benefits and the amazing kind of stuff that like just like this. If we weren't doing this, we would have never met, talked. We'll be friends forever. And that's kind of what I saw when I first started getting into social media, was that you have these communities in whatever niche it is, okay? And you could be good at good at posting, good social media, as long as you're out there and you're authentic and you're doing it because you enjoy it and you want to help other people. That's why I got into it. I love teaching. I'm like, I guess at some point in your life you like want to teach.
And I think that you learn. I think that you learn that the more that you teach, the more that you're learning yourself.
Oh, of course, totally. What I always love like puzzles and putting together kind of complex things. And this is something that is always evolving and changing, always new stuff coming out. But the personal connections that you make and your ability to connect with people that if just a few years ago, it would never happen. I have friends out in California now, that Arizona, down south, that I would have never been like actual, talking to them, almost every day. And it's great. It's great for any business, because you never know where you're going to get new clients and a new source. It's just one call. It could be
love it, man.
Game changer.
Well,
right?
I really appreciate you coming on, man. I really had a fun time, and I appreciate you through the technical difficulties. Hopefully, everything comes out good whenever this is live. But last question I have for you: favorite attorney or law show?
Or law
two come to mind for me, and I'm curious of what you think, because I don't even really like that type of. I love like documentaries and real life stuff, but dude, I binged these two, and there are Suits and Lincoln Lawyer.
Suits I love. Lincoln Lawyer, very good. What is the movie with Jan Schlickman with John Travolta? This is a great.
Is this a movie or a show?
It's a movie. Movie. Hold on. Movie. I'll tell you 1 second. The movie is a civil action, starring John Travolta. For whatever reason, so one of my professors, my first year of law school, it was a book. Okay, it's about an environmental contamination in this town, and this amazing lawyer gets so involved in it, and you got to see it. What ends up happening? It's an amazing story. I love that. But as far as lawyer, I deal with so many lawyers all the time.
You don't need to keep watching.
I don't need to see more lawyers than I'm.
And I know that
my dose
you
of
told
lawyers.
me this, but just
it's good.
Pick one out of anybody listening to this. Whether it was now that you described your amazing mentor, the doctor, not your dad, but whoever it was from, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Dr. The best piece of advice that if you go into a situation and you know that you have outworked whoever it is that you're going up against or competing against, it could be yourself. If you have worked to the max, and you know, okay, if you could have gone harder, okay, but if you put it all out there, you're never going to lose. You're never going to lose, because even when you do lose, it's still a win, okay? Because if you worked that fucking hard, nothing could go wrong. It's at least going to help you in the long run. That's
I love
what
it, man. Thanks for coming on. Where can people find you, by the way?
So check out my firm, uptowninjury.com. But my social media handle is Kyle, Kyle, Newman, NEWMANESQ.
And you post some good stuff, man. Yeah. My favorite is whenever there's a case like on top of you, and it's I love that. So keep those up, man. I'm excited to keep connecting.
Man. Appreciate it.
All righty.
All right, buddy. Thanks, Will.